Hey guys, today we're going to talk about how to quote poetry because quoting poetry works a little bit differently than quoting prose, which is all of our non-poetry writing that we write in normal sentences and paragraphs. Okay, now the rules stay the same in terms of, when you need to use the exact words from a poem, you need to put quotation marks around it, just like you would with dialogue and you know, quoting for evidence and things like that. So that doesn't change. There are just a couple little rules that you need to know about poetry. Okay. Now, first of all, you want to make sure you're quoting the poems exactly, and that means maintaining the line breaks or verse breaks from the original poem. Okay, how a poet chooses to break up their lines is really important to being able to understand the poem. So you want to keep those line breaks. Okay, so when you're quoting multiple lines of poetry, you need to put a slash between the lines. Okay, so in this example, I'm quoting two lines from a poem. Okay, and I say, "For if dreams die, slash, life is a barren field." Okay, so that slash marks my barrier between my two lines. It marks the line break. Okay, and notice I put a space after the slash, just a kind of formatting tip there. Now, poems have much shorter lines, right? So a lot of times when you're trying to quote a chunk of poetry, maybe you're trying to quote a whole stanza, okay? It's going to get really long, and putting all those slashes in at the line breaks just gets kind of tedious, starts to look kind of weird, okay? So when you're quoting more than 4 lines of poetry, you create what's called a block quote, okay? And that is when you just indent the whole quote over, okay? You don't have to use quotation marks because indenting it this way is the clue to the reader that these are someone's exact words you are quoting, okay? So for example, in Langston Hughes's poem Dreams, he states, "Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly." So here I've quoted an entire stanza of this poem, 4 lines, okay? And so I've indented the whole thing. I don't need to use quotation marks when I indent it, okay? And I've introduced it with a colon, okay, instead of with a comma, which is what we do for most of our quotes. When you introduce a really long quote, especially if it's a block quotation, you want to use a colon instead of a comma. Okay. Now, that brings me to my last point. Just a reminder, this is the same for all quotes, but applies to poetry as well. Quotes cannot stand alone. We talked about this in an earlier video, okay? You must introduce quotes as part of a sentence. They can't stand alone as their own sentence, and you should be introducing them with a comma or a colon unless they are super, super short, okay? So in Langston Hughes's poem Dreams, he uses the metaphor "life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly" to emphasize the pain of losing one's dreams. Notice my quote is part of a larger sentence, okay? I've introduced who said it, so the source of the quote. I've included context explaining the quote, and I've put a comma to introduce my quote. All right?